Hi, I'm Pat and welcome back to the channel. I recently received a bunch of questions from subscribers asking me about oil changes. What kind of oil should I be using in the i8? How often should I change it? And what can I do in order to make my oil change easier? Well, that's what this video is about. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please click the subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications because I update information. So a year ago, I released an oil change video and I've learned a few things during that process and had done a few oil changes since then. So today's video is an update to that video. If you're new, this is the video you'll want to watch because this will help make your life easy and answer a lot of questions. So the number one question, what kind of oil should I use in my BMW i8? Well, I have exactly the information from the BMW i8 Service Manual that you're going to want to see. Now, in my previous video, I put 0W30 oil in the BMW i8. It worked well, nothing wrong with that. There's also other videos out there where folks are using 0W20 oil, and BMW is recommending 0W20. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. And there are recommendations from other folks saying use a 5W30 oil. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. So which oil should you be using? Let's take a look at the service manual. First off, there is a section in the manual here for the B38 engine, which is what we have in the BMW i8. And if you are in the United States, you don't have a particulate filter, but if you live in Europe, for example, and you have a later model i8, you may have a particulate filter installed. So there are going to be different oils that you should use based upon those different configurations. So here in the United States, B38 without a particulate filter, we have choices of BMW Long Life 01, 01FE, 04, 12FE, 14FE Plus, and 17FE. But if you have a particulate filter, you are limited to the Long Life 04 and the 12FE. Each one of these oils is a different grade of oil and it contains some additives and some modifiers. You may have an oil that produces better gas mileage. You may have an oil that you don't have to change as often. All these are different factors that you need to consider when you're selecting an oil for your i8. When I got my i8, in the user manual, it recommended a 5W30 oil. Well, that number at the beginning of the oil is really the winter weight of the oil. So if a 5W30 oil is going to protect to a certain temperature, a 0W30 oil is going to protect to an even lower temperature in winter conditions. And the other number on the other side of the W, well, it's either a 30 weight or a 20 weight. And a 20 weight actually is a thinner oil, but a 30 weight actually protects better. A 20 weight oil is thinner, so when the crankshaft spins through the oil that's in the pan in the bottom of the engine, it doesn't have as much resistance. This means you get better gas mileage. And this is something that a lot of manufacturers are pushing. In fact, if you're interested in more information about this, please click the link in the description below because Engineering Explained just did a video about this. And I completely concur with his findings. I had spent some time on the website Bob the Oil Guy. There's a link in the description if you want to read about that. That also talked about the use of a 20 weight oil in order to improve efficiency and increase gas mileage. So if you want to stick with a 20 weight oil, that's your choice. However, I want the best oil that I can go with that will give me the best protection. So I am not going to put a 20 weight oil in this car. Secondly, I had done an oil analysis, and in that oil analysis, it was found that there was some gas dilution in the oil. What that means is, especially with these gas direct injection engines, that gasoline passes past the piston rings into the oil pan. When you add gasoline to oil, it becomes thinner. So if you start off with a 20 weight oil, by the time you need to do an oil change, you may be the equivalent of a 16 weight oil, so now it's protecting even less. So I've really started to feel out what I should be doing regarding the weight of oil that I'm using and also the interval. So let's talk about intervals next. Now, the BMW Service Manual indicates that if you're in the United States, 10,000 miles is your service interval. Because of oil dilution and because of other serious problems that BMW engines have experienced, especially with the Vanos systems, and even some cases where there was an engine, one of my subscribers sent me a picture with the timing chain removed because, well, the timing chain guide started to deteriorate. So I don't recommend a 10,000 mile oil change. At maximum, I want to change the oil at 5,000 miles in my BMW i8. In fact, that's pretty much true for any car that I own. I stick to 5,000 miles, and that's because oil is cheaper than an engine. If you have to replace an engine, expect to pay $10,000 or more in order to have this engine swapped out. And that's pretty pricey. I don't think anybody wants to go through that. Once the engine's going, you can't sell the car. You got to replace the engine, you got to make it work, so then you can sell the car, and you're already out more money. So spend the money, do your oil changes earlier, and that way you protect your engine even more. So what am I going to do today? I'm going to put in 5W30 Motul V300 racing oil. Why? Because it's exactly what I put in the car last time. I put this V300 5W30 oil in the car and I drove it for about 3,000 miles. Yes, I'm doing a 3,000 mile oil change, and the reason I'm doing it even sooner is because I took the car to the dyno. I've been doing 0 to 60 tests with launch control. I've been pushing this car, so why not just dump the oil early? Secondly, I bought my oil at FCP Euro. That means when I dump this oil and put fresh oil in, I can return for a refund. That's right, the oil and the filter are going back to FCP Euro. I just have to pay the shipping. Well, PayPal actually pays the shipping. And more about that later. So I am getting an oil change for free. So why not change the oil every 3,000 miles or 5,000 miles or whatever it is? Now, maybe you bought a service plan where you have to take your BMW to the dealer and they give you an oil change on the house, but they only want to do it every 10,000 miles. Well, why not change it yourself at 5,000 and continue to use your plan at the 10,000 mark? You know, that way you can change your oil early and protect your engine a little bit better, and then that way you're happier in the long run. So if you decide that you want to do something better for your engine, consider these recommendations. At a minimum, 0W30, change it every 5,000 miles. I think your engine will be happier and it'll help your car in the long run. And finally, I received the question, how do I make my oil changes easier? Previously, I put the quick jacks under the car and lifted the car up, and I thought, well, not everybody has access to the quick jacks, not everybody can afford it. And I'm the type of person who likes to do work on the cheap. So this video is going to show you exactly how to perform the oil change without using the quick jacks. In fact, right here is a set of ramps. I built them myself. All they are 5 boards, but each of these 5 boards I've cut into individual pieces in order to make a ramp. So let's take a closer look. It's just a set of ramps, just 5 boards cut and some nails holding them together. Now, I use this in order to do some work where I don't want to take the time to use the quick jacks, but today I'm going to use these in order to perform the oil change. I'm going to place these behind the rear wheel, and I'm going to back the car up the ramps so that we have access to underneath the i8. Let's see if we can pull this off. It's going to be a little bit tight because they aren't that high, but I want to show you we can actually do it. All right, we have the vehicle up on ramps. We've got a few inches more clearance than we have sitting on the ground, and I went ahead and chalked the front wheel. You could use anything you have laying around just to prevent the vehicle from rolling forward. Obviously, we have the park and brake that turns on automatically when we put it in park, but it's always good to be safe. And one thing I forgot to mention, last time I did an oil change, I installed the Valvomax valve, which means that I don't have to pull the oil plug and get oil everywhere. Not only is this going to be a fast, but clean oil change. Let's get started. So I have a blanket here, and there's a link in the description below if you're interested in getting something like this. This is a moving blanket, but it is actually very good in order to protect the surfaces on the BMW i8. So we're going to go ahead and move our trunk lid up, and we can place the blanket down inside here because, well, we will be leaning against the vehicle. We don't want it falling out. So this is good to go. We'll go ahead and release our two cam locks and take this cover off. We'll then remove this styrofoam section. This does not get bolted down, even though there are some pegs here in the top of this engine cover that go through this hole. This does not get bolted down. It just sits there. Then we're going to release these knurled knobs. There's a 5mm tool that you could use if these are too tight, and I like this little palm ratchet. That way we're not using a big ratchet. There's a link in the description if you're interested in this. I highly recommend it, and as well as the tools you're going to need, there'll be a link in the description for those as well. Once all the knurled knobs are removed, we can lift up and pull straight back on this thin aluminum engine cover. Now we have access to the top of our engine. Of course, it's a little bit far away for me to reach in there, so I'm just going to bring over a stool real quick and then undo the oil cap. Let's give that a half a turn, and the oil cap comes right off. So I'm going to put this aside. Now we're all done with the top of the engine. Let's move on to the bottom. Okay, I'm under the car, got my cameras set up, and I'm ready to go. This is the Valvomax drain. Replacing your oil plug with this makes life a whole lot easier. Now, I don't have the car very high because, well, I'm trying to demonstrate that I could do this without using the quick jacks. So I'm going to unscrew this first, and then I'm going to use the tube that screws into the actual released valve, and we will get this oil drained. So this is on here pretty tight, which is good. As I loosen it up, it's disconnecting from the rubber, which is good. So that's more of a dust cover. I'm just going to go ahead and take that off and get it out of the way. Now, I do have an oil pan here, but if I did have the car higher, I could use another container. So I'm going to use the hose and screw this in. I'm going to put the hose into the oil pan, and then about halfway through my change, I'm going to take this oil sample bottle. I got another sample that I want to send off to Blackstone this time and see how this oil dilution is going with this particular oil with only 3,000 miles on the engine. So you won't be able to see all of it because obviously I'm going to have the oil pan in the way, but I'm going to try to do the best I can. Yeah, we already have some oil flowing out. That's great. So I'm going to go ahead and start the flow by continuing to turn the Valvomax. Yeah, it's really coming out now. So when I get about half the oil out, I'm just going to go ahead and transition over to the sample bottle. And this should be really easy. Since I already have a tube here that's flowing oil out, all I got to do is dip the sample bottle into the stream. I don't know if you could see that on camera, but that's pretty cool. It's working really well. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take my oil sample. And then I could let the rest drain into the pan while I cap this off. No mess. So I'm going to go ahead and release this now. My hands are still clean. I got no oil on my hands. Typically I'm pulling the plug out of here, there's oil going everywhere. That's not the case right now. So let me go ahead and just disable this. Just going to go ahead and unscrew it. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and take this and my oil drain pan out from underneath the car and then recap that. So I'm just going to wipe off the Valvomax here. Make sure there isn't any extra residue. There's a little bit of oil on the rag, so it definitely did leave a little bit of oil on the threads there. And I can go ahead and reinstall it. And just an FYI, I did take the vehicle out and drive it around for about 5 to 10 minutes, and that way the engine oil was nice and warm, and it flowed much, much better than if it was cold. Look at that. And I'll just tuck the little restraint here, the little tether up, and it's all done. That is the oil completely drained out. So the next step is going to be to do the filter. Now, on my other video, I did take some, I believe, better video of what it's like to remove this. It's hard with the vehicle so low to get good angles on the cameras that I have set up. And you could see how to remove the oil filter. My previous video does a better job of recording this because I'm closer to the ground right now. It's hard to get the cameras in at a specific angle, but I'm going to use the T55 Torx Bit, and I'm going to loosen the oil drain, and I'm going to have a small drain pan here in order to collect the oil. This oil plug that's on the bottom of this oil filter housing is replaceable, and the new filter comes with a new drain plug that goes in here. So let's just take the T55, break that loose, and let it drain. While we're waiting for that oil to drain, let me talk a little bit about the oil and the filter that I'm going to use. I ordered these from FCP Euro, and this is the Motul 5W30 racing oil. It comes in 2-liter cans, so there's 4 liters total here, and this is the Mahle oil filter that is for the BMW i8. Now, I previously installed exactly the same thing. So I used the Mahle filter, I used the 5W30 300V Motul, and because of that, and because of where I ordered it, this is going to be a free oil change. So let me tell you a little bit more about that. If you're in the United States and you order from FCP Euro, everything that's in the box has a lifetime replacement guarantee. There it is. You just go online, you fill out a form, and you send in the stuff that you previously bought there, and they give you your money back. In other words, I bought this exact filter, I bought this exact oil last time, and now that I'm doing an oil change, when I put these in the car, I take the old filter off, I put the old oil back in here, put it back in the box, ship it to FCP Euro. My shipping's free because I paid with PayPal, and return shipping is always free up to a certain amount. So definitely check out FCP Euro. I'll have links in the description below. Every oil change is free. Every time you do plug changes is free. Change an air filter, it's free. Windshield wipers is everything that they sell on their website. Guaranteed. You can return it when it no longer has any life left. So, I mean, why would you buy your oil and filter anywhere else? Definitely. Link in the description. Check out FCP Euro. Now that that's finished draining, I could use my 32mm socket in order to release the filter housing. And there's still a few more drips coming down from the oil filter housing, so I'm going to go ahead and leave this pan here and then take the oil filter up top so we can change it out. If you see my first oil change video, you'll know that I like to use a bag in order to put the filter and the housing into, so that when I separate the two, oil doesn't go flying everywhere, because this locks into place. So I'm just going to give it a twist and a pull. There we go. I'm also going to make sure that I clean the cap here that goes on the filter housing very well. In fact, the service manual recommends that you use some brake cleaner on the threads to make sure that there is no issue here, especially since you've drained oil here and there could be some residue of, dirt and grime and other things. But first, let me take off this O-ring, and then we'll go ahead and just give this a quick squirt of brake clean just to make sure it's clean. So I have a little dental pick here. I'm just going to take this and find a little gap, which is already built into the housing and go ahead and pull this seal off. Now this little tool here, there'll be a link in the description if you're interested in picking one of these up. So let me take this off camera and give this a quick clean. Okay, these threads here are completely clean now. We don't need to clean the rest of it with brake clean. It's just this part here, because as we're draining oil out, there could be residue that comes out of the filter, and of course that may cause a problem when we're screwing in the new drain, and the seal may not seal correctly. So it's important to make sure that we clean this up with some brake clean. Now we're ready to go ahead and put this O-ring on and go ahead and put the new drain plug back on. Now the kit that came with this filter also came with a new drain plug and a new O-ring. So I'm just going to take a little bit of oil, I'm going to put on the O-ring just to make it a little bit easier to put that O-ring back on the oil cap. And there is a line down here where it sits, so you'll have to get it past all these threads in order to get it to sit appropriately. There we go, we're all the way down. And now this new drain plug, this has a rubber seal on it right here. So we're just going to put a little bit of engine oil on that rubber seal, and then we can screw this into place. Now this will be torqued down. I'm going to wait to get on the car to torque it down, but at least we'll get it hand started for now. So I'm going to take my old oil filter and I'm going to save this. And of course I'm going to take the drain plug and put it in here as well as this O-ring, because this is all going back to FCP Euro and I have to return it as I got it. Otherwise, well, they may just not give me a refund. So everything's going back to them. And here's the new oil filter. This side of the oil filter goes into the car, so this expands around a small diameter tube that goes in here. But this is the part that goes ahead and plugs into the oil filter cap for the housing for the enclosure, and it has these little feet on it, so it will snap right into place once you give it a push. There we go. So initially this is a little bit more difficult to get off of here, but getting it back on isn't that bad. So at this point we have our drain plug reinstalled, we have our O-ring on, we have our oil filter in place. We're going to go ahead and get underneath the car next, but before we install this, we need to verify that the check valve is actually moving. Now it's going to be very difficult for me to show you this on camera, so I'm going to point you over to Heidi and Franny's channel. They did an excellent job in their oil change, and they took great video to show exactly how to check that check valve. So I'm just going to clean up the oil filter housing, and got a little bit of oil on this wiring harness here, but it didn't really run anywhere, so not bad. So inside the service manual, you could see exactly where this is located. This is a little check valve, and we're just going to push up on it, make sure it's operating correctly, and it is. There's a little bit of oil coming out of it, so that's a good sign. And now we could go ahead and install our oil filter. So I'm just going to take this and get it lined up, and it feels like it should be where it's at. Give it a push, and then the threads will catch. There it goes. And I could get it started by hand. Now I have my torque wrench ready, and I'm going to go ahead and torque this to 25 Newton meters, and then I'm going to back it off 180 degrees and then tighten it again to the same setting. So that's what the service manual calls for. So it's going to go ahead and tighten this. And if you need a torque wrench and these parts, there's links in the description. There it is. So then I'm going to go ahead and back it off 180 degrees. So let me give myself plenty of clearance here. That should be good. I'll eye up that 180 degrees. Excellent. And then we'll go forward again on the wrench, and we'll lock it down to its torque. Excellent. Next we got to torque the drain plug. The drain plug is a 5 Newton meter torque, but I don't have a torque wrench that goes that low, so I have pound inches, so I'm going to tighten it to 44 pound inches with this silly little old, very old style torque wrench. Yep. And it doesn't ratchet. Gotta keep that in mind. Here we go. All right. And I just have a few housekeeping steps that I have to perform here. This was the drain plug that came out of the bottom of the filter housing. And I'm going to stick this along with the crush washer because I don't need the crush washer. I have the Valvomax on the car as well as the ring. And I can go ahead and seal this up and stick it back in the container that it came in and then ship this back to FCP. Now, this tube that I use with the Valvomax, I'm going to go ahead and get some brake cleaner and just run this through the tube so it's cleaned up, so it's fresh for next time. And then that way, any of the oil, the residue that's in here, I send another sample of oil off to Blackstone, it won't interfere with that test. So I'm going to save this oil because this is ultimately going back into these containers. Let's go ahead and fill the car up with some 5W30. Okay, we're back on the top side. I have a clean funnel and I have 2 liters of Motul 5W30. Now, this is an interesting cap. So it comes compressed and you pull up on these little ears and then you pull it straight up so that you have a spout, and then when you unscrew this, you can then go ahead and pour in your oil. Now there is a child-proof or a secondary secure tab here. So we're going to pull that out of the way. There we go. Now we can go ahead and begin to pour in some fresh oil. This engine's going to love it. And I have my 2nd liter. I haven't pulled the top on this yet, but as you can see, it has 2 ears. You pull straight up, and there's your spout. Pretty cool. Okay, all 4 liters is in. We'll go ahead and remove our funnel and install the oil cap. And we're just going to reinstall our oil cap the same way it came off. So our next step is to go ahead and install the aluminum engine cover. Put our knurled knobs back in here, our foam piece that sits on top, and then the leather piece, and then fold everything back down. I'll skip the process for you. I covered it already in my first video, so if you need more information or you want to see the steps again, definitely check out the link in the description. Now let's go ahead and reset the oil life. And our final step, of course, we need to still remove the chocks from the front tire and drive the car off the ramps, but we want to go ahead and reset the oil life monitor here on the display. So we're going to go ahead and not put our foot on any pedal right now. We're just going to press the start stop button, and we're going to press and hold this button for about 10 seconds. And then it says engine oil reset possible. So I'm going to go ahead and press and hold for about 3 seconds. And then it says reset question mark, press and hold for 3 seconds. Reset in progress. And now reset's been successful. So the oil life is now back up to its original setting. It's ready to go. So on the iDrive, if we go ahead and click Vehicle Info and Vehicle Status, we could come down to the service required and see that, of course, the engine oil is okay. And, of course, it gives an indication of 11,000 miles or the 8th month of 2021. Now, I do have a vehicle check here. I'm supposed to take my car over to BMW, the dealer, and they're supposed to go over the vehicle. But I'm going to go ahead and follow the service manual steps myself, and then I'll go ahead and clear this when I'm ready. So from the seat of the BMW i8, that wraps up today's video. If you liked today's video, please give me a big thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing and ringing that bell for notifications, as I'll be posting more BMW i8 content. Thanks for watching, and happy motoring.